We've had some good questions come in. A couple of reminders, if you have questions based on these presentations, please type them into the question box. We also had a question about whether these presentations will be available, and the answer is yes. The webinar is being recorded. It will be available at www.fourcornerswind.org/webinars. So thanks for that question. This is a question that I think either Amanda or Johnny could take. Can you elaborate on why integration into an RSO reduces reserve requirement?
So if you, I'll take a stab and then Johnny, you can go after me.
Sure.
If you have a 15% requirement, and I have to meet all that 15% requirement myself, I have to build and hold that amount. But if you have a wider geography, then maybe I can hold 5% and someone else can hold 5% and someone else can hold 5%. If you have electrical interconnection and the electronics to be able to share that power, then I can get that power from one point to another when I need to. Right now, there are some reserve sharing pools. So I'm more familiar with the Southwest because I live in Arizona. But there are reserve sharing pools. So if I'm a utility and I'm in trouble because my power plant tripped off, I have written agreements with others around me that I can go buy energy from them. But energy right now is traded on the hour. So I can say on the top of the hour, hey, I need 450 or say 450 megawatts for the next 2 hours, but I can only do that on an hourly basis. It's very inflexible. When you're in a modern RTO, you can buy and sell power on a 5-minute basis, and so and I can actually get that power delivered because now I'm electrically or I'm connected to these other balancing authorities. So it means that I don't have to have all those generators sitting in my geographic footprint. They can be next door to me, and I can access them just as quickly as if they were in my footprint. I'm not sure if that was clear or not.
I think that's spot on, Amanda. And there's another I think layer that I would add to, which is those reserves are the most expensive and difficult part of managing your grid and your most limiting factor, and they're based on predicting your worst case scenario. Like if that nuke plant turns off, by accident, or if there's an earthquake, like what is the thing that could go wrong that would cause you to need those reserves? And the short of it is that when you have many more options because you're connected to many more grids, the severity of your worst case gets diminished. Because before you get to drawing on those reserves, you have a lot more options like that 5-minute market.
Right, and in Arizona, Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station, the largest nuclear generating station in the country, in this region, the largest thing that they plan for happening is losing 1,000 megawatts at any given time because that's the size of one of the generators. So we have to carry, reserves to be able to deal with losing 1,000 megawatts, which is significant.
So this is a question for Johnny. Can you explain if wind will be procured differently if a regional market is formed versus how it's done today through utility procurement processes?
Procurement is something that doesn't necessarily follow from the RSO. It could be procured the same way. It could be procured in a different way. I think that what's important to take away from the impact of an ISO is that it creates more options for utilities or any other entity that's looking to serve an energy need. In the physical market that we have right now, if you want to go beyond the service territory of your balancing authority to source energy from any generation type, that generator needs to own the transmission or own rights along the transmission lines, and that's what we call a bilateral or a physical market. That creates a scarcity problem. It's highly uneconomical, and it's extremely inefficient. In the context of a single balancing authority that's optimizing available transmission to available generation and load needs, with high-tech IT software and real-time communication from lots of data points all throughout the system, anywhere that you interconnect on that system is available to anywhere else within that system. You don't need to go through the rigmarole and the effort and the cost of securing bilateral transmission rights. So I think the short of it is that in the context of an RSO, there's more choices available to those procuring energy, and that's part of the reason that the economics of wind are better realized.
And if I can tag on to that, so the way I understand the resource adequacy process is the California Independent System Operator, if it became a regional organization, they are going to look at, they're going to get from individual states and utilities what they think their load projections are going to be, and then they plan what they think is needed for the system. Individual utilities and the public service commissions or public utility commissions still do the job they have always done about, planning and building and doing procurement of resources. Those are then fed up to the regional system. Certainly the regional system impacts what's built because they may say, hey, we need generation over here, or we need fast starting generation, or we need this and that. But the bidding, utilities still will go through, a process that they go through, and the states will still go through the process they go through. That is just fed up to the regional system.
Yeah.
So we have a question here regarding regulatory process and approvals, and the question is, does presumably Mountain West Transmission Group faces the same regulatory hurdles as the Western RSO? Do they likewise need buy-in from each affected state's utility commission and/or legislature and/or the FERC, et cetera? Amanda, maybe we could start with you on that question.
Yes, and the short answer is yes. The two processes, they're so interesting to look at how they've formed and how they've been done differently. The thing that's been amazing to me with the California ISO process is that there's a lot of political involvement, and partially that's because the California legislature has to act, and now there's discussion about other legislatures have to act. When you look at the formation of other RTOs around the country, legislatures never got involved because this was agreements between utilities and their regulators. This is most of it is so down in the weeds and technically challenging that to me is the appropriate places for decisions to be made. We have heard discussions about, well, the legislature has to also authorize, states to move forward. That just doesn't make logical sense to me. I don't think legislatures have the decision. It's just going to be difficult. So the California process has been very political. Most RTOs have formed, and they haven't been political at all. The Mountain States Transmission Group has formed, and it's been the utilities deciding what is good for the system, what is good for their customers, and now they're going to take it up through a public process to get input, and eventually it will land at the public utility commissions in all the states, and yes, it will have to go to FERC. And if the Mountain States decide to join Southwest Power Pool, then it's the Southwest Power Pool that actually will go to FERC and amend their tariff and say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to add on, these 7 entities in 3 states or 4 states. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. It does face the same regulatory challenges as ISO in California, but like Amanda was saying, it doesn't face necessarily the same legislative challenges, nor would it really anywhere else except California and its particular history with the energy crisis, 15, 16 years ago, which led to the creation of the system that we have now, sort of a legislator exerting control in a dire crisis time. And I think that if the California ISO weren't set up such that it would take a legislative bill passing through both houses and getting signed by the governor to change governance. I don't think it would be as highly politicized as it has been.
Right, and I guess one last point. Some PUCs think that they don't have the authority to make this decision, and some PUCs think they do. To me, this is a regulatory decision. This is the PUCs have to look out for the best interest of the utilities and the consumers in their state. So that is not a legal opinion, but it's my personal opinion.
Thanks. We have time for a couple more questions. Please feel free to type them into the questions box. We have a couple of questions here regarding the Mountain West Transmission Group effort and the California ISO, Western ISO expansion effort. So I'm going to try to combine these into a question I think both of you could respond to. Does having two regional markets as opposed to one help or hurt renewable energy development? And let's start with that one, and then we'll do the follow-on one next.
Okay, I'll take a shot. Go ahead, Johnny.
Sure. Well, I think that either one helps, and I think both help. I think that the Mountain West effort, if it comes to fruition, will have a really great impact on sourcing extremely high caliber wind and solar from in and around Colorado and neighboring states to the big load centers there. And I think that would be a really great thing for that part of WECC. And I think that if the California ISO or some other iteration comes to fruition and pairs together, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, California, the Northwest, those kind of states which are so closely integrated already or connected already, that would go a really long way in that part of WECC. I think that if 10 years from now there's sort of two competing ISOs that are close to being adjacent, you might see those ISOs talk about merging, and we've certainly seen that in the East. But I think that one is not necessarily better than the other, and having two proceeding on separate parallel tracks at two edges of WECC, I think is a good thing.
I would answer it this way. I agree with what Johnny just said. We have 38 different balancing authorities right now, so that means there's a term called SEAMs where two different operating entities have to deal with each other, and they have different rules and tariffs and ways that they operate. And so these 38 entities have to deal with all those different people around them. If we created two different ISOs, or the Mountain West folks join something else, we're reducing the number of SEAMs. We're reducing the number of 38 to some smaller number. That has inherent benefits. It creates a SEAM between Mountain West and whatever, if anything, forms out of California, but that's still better than what we have now. We have a very inefficient system now, so it is moving in the right direction. Somebody had said to me recently, which I kind of got a chuckle out of, that if the Mountain West joins the Southwestern Power Pool, which is a possibility, they actually join that market, then decisions for the state of Colorado will be impacted by what happens in Arkansas. And that just is a little mind-bending to me, because we're used to thinking about just the West.
So Amanda, we had a provocative follow-up question, and you may or may not want to answer this as our last question, but do you have a view as to which RTO it would make the most sense for the Mountain West Transmission Group to join?
Oh, no, I don't have a personal opinion. They're leaning towards the Southwestern Power Pool, I know that. And if you have followed the development of any of these RTOs, Southwestern Power Pool has been very engaged in the West. Early on, they came in and they made proposals to PacifiCorp. They've been engaged with all the Western commissioners. They really have been very thoughtful, and they have been very organic in their forming. So they formed out of the needs and the desires of utilities, and I think they're very well thought of. So I think they're the front runner. I think they're the lead horse.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I don't think that one is necessarily better than the other. When you're dealing with so much dysfunction, anything that smooths that over is a step in the right direction, and potentially a very big step.
So I think
with that we're, oh sorry, Amanda, go ahead.
What I hear, my sense is that this isn't a if this is going to happen, this is a when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen. So, folks that have issues and, key stakeholders, they need to be engaged because something will form, and we want to make sure that it works the best for everyone.
So with that, we're approaching the top of the hour, and I would like to thank Amanda Ormond and Johnny Castana, our presenters, for doing an excellent job today on a very complex set of topics. And thank all of you who joined us as attendees in the webinar. As I mentioned, the webinar is recorded. It will be posted at the fourcornerswind.org website that you see on your screen. Please refer it to colleagues. We do webinars every few months on different topics regarding wind energy in the Western United States, so stay tuned for future webinars from the Four Corners Wind Resource Center. Thank you all so much for joining us, and have a good afternoon.